Hello and welcome back. So this week's been a funny week. We'll start with. There might be a shorter video this week because I've been diagnosed with pleurisy, which is a bit of a pain really, especially in it is a negative of Homestead life, I suppose. So you're outside all the time and you do get put through a couple of things. So just a quick update on what's been going on at the beginning of this week. The pigs have escaped their enclosure 3 times today. Well, by pigs I mean one of the pigs has escaped their enclosure 3 times today. She's got out, we've managed to fix the problem. The fence was basically not hammered down enough, so there was a gap at the base of the fence that she was sneaking out under. That's now solved. They're doing really well actually, the pigs as well. We'll get a closer look at them later on in the week, I would assume. But what I was going to update with you with today is the addition of some new animals. Now they are only the small animals and they are of the feathery kind. However, I've got 2 of them just here, so I'll turn the camera around. So these are 2 of the new chickens. Now most people know that when you put chickens in with a large number of chickens, you should always try to put in a balanced mix. However, what you will see is they're 2 different sizes, and that is because the one in the front is the mother and the one in the back is her daughter. Now the one at the front is an Araucana and the daughter is an Araucana / Moran. And the Moran comes because the baby is Rangers, our cockerels. So we got them from the same person who had Ranger and the 5 or the 2 Morans we currently have and the 3 Araucanas we currently have. And she kept them for a bit longer just to see what the baby was, to see if it was male or female, because she didn't want to give the male away with the mum, but because it's a female they were happy to give them away. In addition to that, we have also got some new ducks and they're here. So the new 2 birds, other 2 new birds, are those 2 little ducks. Now they are mallards, they are a breeding pair, so they're fitting in very well with our ducks, to be honest. But as you can see, we've got a lovely little female and a lovely little male, and that is them at full size, so they are very tiny birds. You can compare them to the size of the Cherry Valleys and the Pekin and even the Runner, but they're settled in really well and we're very keen on them. Yeah, so now that they're running as a flock, whenever you're in here you can obviously hear the ducks instantly. There's no problems between the ducks and the chickens either. You can see they're all eating happily together. Yeah, so Ranger, our cockerel, hasn't taken offence to them. None of the chickens have taken offence to them. So it actually seems to be quite happy families. You can see we're feeding them non-medicated feed, because obviously you can get chicken feed that's medicated, however ducks can't have it. So we feed them non-medicated feed, and any medication we need to provide the chickens are given to them individually as well. Guinea fowl. So I'll just turn the camera around and show you guinea fowl closure. So as you may see, let me just get around. As you may see, the guinea fowl closure now has a roof. Now it's a very higgity-piggity roof. However, that is because even though they have both their wings clipped, they still fly out of it. Now it is only short, it's only I think a 3-foot panel, so it's not very surprising. It's not very surprising that they are breaking out. However, we were rather hoping that they wouldn't break out so easily, because with guinea fowl the most important thing is that for the 3 first 2 weeks to 6 weeks, you keep them in an area that you want to be their home, and then you release them slowly so that they get used to coming back here and coming back to where you want them to roost. Otherwise they end up, especially here, they'd be in that tree, they'd be in the trees down the bottom, and they might end up in the woodland. So we want them ideally to come back up here. Eventually they will be introduced into the veg garden where they will happily work, but for the time being this is their home and this is where we want them to stay. They're relatively small still, but they're doing really well. I'm very fond of them. Not that anyone else in the household are, with their escapee fiascos. However, that is why, as you can see, they've got a very mixed roof. It was just to avoid them jumping on mostly this side and also the perch at the back there, so they stopped going out. Second video of the week. It's the next day, and yesterday evening when we went to feed the animals, we discovered that we're pretty confident that our ram has bred with some of our ewes, because you won't be able to see it from this angle unfortunately, but we will try and put a picture in here. But Teal is we don't think is bred, because she's got a slight limp on her back leg, which we're monitoring. However, Treasure, Tasty and Anna all have some raddle on them. As a result of this, we're pretty confident that we can now have them moved to a new field. So our plan is to use them, come down this channel here, through this gate, and we're going to set them up in a netting, the orange poultry, sheep, you know, livestock netting. We're going to set up a pen here, because ideally what we need to do is, this grass is quite old. The horses have gone over this field twice already, and you can see when I go close into the ground, there's a lot of dead in there. So what we ideally want to do is we want to put the fence up so that we can put the sheep on it, because the sheep will graze a lot closer to the ground than the horses will, and they'll eat a lot more of it than the horses will. Horses are very picky, sheep less so. The grass is good quality. It's this year it's had a really good growth rate over the last couple of months. So it's put on a decent amount of nice new growth for them to get some added nutrition. And our aim is to set them up in inside the 50-metre net. So it's not a massive area. It's about 12.5 by 12.5 metres if we do it as a square. But what we want to do is we want to set them up in this massive net. And then what we will do is we'll then end up running them down this channel here and then up the next row. And we want to ideally get 2 rows done before they move in. Now we are doing we're doing holistic grazing, which means that they can only be in this field for a certain number of days due to the impact that their weight and due to the fact that it can lead to compaction of the ground. As a result of this, I believe this field is the one that they can be in for approximately 15 to 18 days. I think 18 is the maximum number of days in here. So what we're aiming to do is run them in this field for the 18 days. Let the horses just graze a bit more of this field that they're currently in for those 18 days. And then we'll move the sheep into the field the horses were in. Get the horses to tidy it up, get the sheep to tidy it up. And then move the horses over there. So we'll then work with the ewes following the horses around, because the horses graze a decent length out. The sheep then finish it off. Then we can access the dying stuff underneath. And it may not occur this over winter because it's not ideal time, but in spring that would be beneficial to us, especially if we have lambs, because obviously we can then run all of them together in this big circle. Especially when we have, because what we'll do is we'll let it graze to the ground, and then what we're planning on doing is we're planning on getting in a, I've got a scarifier and aerator, which means that we can restore this land. It's only a little one, it only is a little garden machine, it's not a tractor or one that attaches to anything like that, which means it will be a time-consuming process. However, it will mean that we can get the field back to a very healthy condition, and we will then also put a new grass in it that we can then use in order to ensure that we can have the field with the type of grass that we ideally want. As you can see behind, we've got the fence up. We have a couple of areas where we need to just put some posts just to stop it drooping as much. You can see over there, just there's a clear one there, and there's a couple down the back line. So we're just going to go get some posts to just secure the fence line up, right? And then it will only be the girls who are going in here, so they'll have a decent amount of grazing to do. As soon as it gets low, it's not going to be they're in here for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days or a week. It depends on how long it takes them to graze the grass down. If they graze the grass down in 2 days here, they move on. If they graze the grass down in 5 days, they stay in there for 5 days. We want the ground to be grazed. There is a nice amount of grass in there, and they should graze quite happily in there. And obviously we have got the entire length up to the tunnel to go, so we're going to rotate it. So we're going to run this one, then it's going to just bounce over to here, and so forth and so forth. So it will always be this width and this length, and the only difference will be its location. Getting the girls into it is going to be probably our biggest challenge with it. We'll have to get them out of the gate over there, down the line here, and then in a diagonal. Hopefully they'll follow food, but we obviously need to be able to get them out. And we don't have a sheepdog, and we have Shetlands, which, if you haven't got Shetlands, they're very flighty. They don't flock, they flee, and hopefully my work with training them to come to the bucket is going to work for the move. Otherwise, one of our videos, or later in this clip, you'll see all the Shetlands everywhere with us chasing after them. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Right, see you in a bit. Good morning and welcome to a very, very cold Highland homestead. It was -1 last night, but feels like -4 or -5. And as a result, as you can see, the ground is completely frozen. We have frozen water buckets as well, which means we've obviously come down, but as you can see, pretty decently thick ice. I mean, that's about 1.5 centimeters easily. But what we have done is, so last night we didn't get to film it because we were very keen. It was getting dark and we were very keen to get them moved because they needed to move. As you can see, I'm inside the netting that we set up earlier, and so are 4 of the sheep. So what we done last night was we had the struggle of moving the 4 ewes over. So getting them out of this field was hard because they saw the gate open still as a barrier. So they didn't come out for the starters. Once they were out, we obviously then needed to separate them from the males who were also out. So it was a case of running them all down, letting the females that came through that gap and into this pen, which worked quite well. But in the end, one of our ewes ended up staying with the boys. So it was her versus her and the 3 boys, and we only needed one of them, which obviously puts the odds not in our favour anymore. So we ended up having to catch her and just holding her and walking her over. But they've settled in quite nice. We have given them a shelter just to stay under, which surprisingly has done really well. It's just a basic shelter. But as you can see, it's not frosty under there, so it's obviously been dry, warm enough. But the boys still have the shelter of the trees down the far end, but we will probably be looking at building them one of these shelters soon. You want to know how we done it? Let us know in the comments and we will be sure to fill that in. The pig shelter has also stood up relatively well. There's no frost in there. They've got enough straw in there to keep them warm. They've also got access to water through the water systems, through the drain, the water drain, so the natural drain that goes through the land. So it's fresh water constantly. Same with the male sheep at the moment, and that hasn't frozen, so it wasn't cold enough thankfully to freeze that. But yeah, sheep are moved. They will be in here once it thaws out. They'll obviously start grazing again. but we want them to graze this down, and then they'll be moved further and further along the channel. It is good because it's getting the sheep, or it's getting the horses used to the sheep, because at some point, hopefully in the future, we will be able to get the sheep trained well enough that we will be able to get them to come over here. I'll just turn the camera around, it's probably easy to see. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get the sheep trained well enough that they will always come to bucket, and therefore we won't need to worry about having them in a fenced area, and we can instead have them free ranging with the horses. But we need the horses to be used to them too. But yeah, they're all happy. It's a cold morning, we're going to be getting back in. We've just got to feed a couple of the horses now. The other animals are all fed, and the chickens and the ducks are also out as well. They're also enjoying the cold weather. Oh, Teal. No, they're still a bit scared. They come to food but nothing else. However, I shall leave you be. That is probably the last video of this week, so we will catch you in the next week's video. Bye bye.